Let's get another perspective now on the meeting. We're joined by Bantu Holomisa, the leader of the United Democratic Movement. A very good evening to you, General. Thanks very much for your time. Let me take us a step back, if you will, how the meeting came about and whether, in fact, there were conditions to you talking about the meeting prior to it taking place at the weekend.
Thank you for inviting me. You will recall that we started very well, but at some stage there were certain areas where we seemed to have been caught off guard. In particular, the issues which were related to the decision of the Parliament of the Sixth Administration. And that has confused a lot of people. But I'm happy that today we agreed that let us not usurp the legislative authority of Parliament and the authority of the executive, which is led by the President. So I think from here, we will improve the situation of communicating our decision, especially that we have now clearly explained to the nation that the GNU key structures are Political Leaders Forum, number 2, GNU Chief Whips Forum, which is the chief whips of the parties which are in Parliament represented in the GNU, and of course the clearinghouse when there are disputes. But I must commend the clearinghouse this time around because it made our work easy, because all the contentious issues which were raised by certain political parties were addressed long before we met this past weekend. So I'm satisfied with the progress which we are making.
But presumably, before you got to discuss very specific issues, one would imagine that you would have had to do an analysis of what went wrong beyond simply what you refer to as usurping the powers or the authority of the legislature, but also of the president or executive with powers vested in the president. Were there other things that you looked at that made the government of national unity not to function optimally?
Well, the government of national unity has been functioning almost on every area. I mean, you have just heard from the president telling the nation about the successes of the GNU. But one of the weaknesses of the GNU was not to come up with a communication strategy to reclaim our successes. So, but what we have what you must also not forget is that most of the leaders which met this past weekend are full members of the cabinet, and sometimes as deputy ministers as well. We have a privilege of being invited in the extended cabinet. A good example, recently, we emerged from a extended cabinet lekgotla, where we were talking about the actions of the medium-term development plan and gain implementation plan, wherein we were saying in that lekgotla that we have to come up with plans now which are implementable with time frames. And also, if you have been given a budget, make use of that money. Don't come up at the last hour to say you were unable to do this because of that. Also, in that lekgotla, we took a resolution as party lead, as cabinet members, that the ministers and the directors general must stop being gatekeepers where they allow corruption to take place. Also, this past weekend, the president has emphasized that we need to act with speed. All the programs of the government must be implemented urgently. And if ministers or DGs are dragging their feet, the door is open for them. What more would one want?
Now, but the reforms that the president was talking about, whether it's electricity, it's the railways, it's the visa system, I mean, all those were initiated years ago, before the government of national unity came into being. Yes. In many areas, I mean, these were slow to come about. But how does the government of national unity claim responsibility, I mean, for that, given the fact that these things were initiated years ago?
You must remember that government acts like a relay in when the athletes are running. So the baton was given to us. It doesn't mean that when you handle that baton, you must go back to starting point. So it's a continuation of the work which was started by the previous government. But the important thing now is the implementation. We have been talking about the development of infrastructure, electricity, and so on. And the budget was allocated for that in this financial year. So we are focusing on that mandate. And the governments come and go, but you never destroy what the previous government has done. So it's not a question of one is claiming what. We are talking now, for instance, to say we need to invest more on food security, skills development, including the review of sitters, whether they are delivering or not. Those sitters were established by previous governments. So we have to look at professionalism and depoliticization of the public service. If, for instance, just to make an example, why would you invite DGs, commanders of the defense, generals, into a work study group meeting of the ANC MPs? That thing has to stop. That is this present government which is talking about that. Let us depoliticize the whole thing. For instance, you look at the commissions currently, the police and the SIU, they are arresting people. They are exposing corruption. And the NPA, we resolved in the previous khutla that let us make sure that we appoint people to man these key positions, especially the criminal justice system, in particular, the NPA department.
Now, speaking of depoliticization, the Democratic Alliance, I mean, last year opposed the budget. Did you speak about how you're going to handle such issues going forward, and broadly or generally, how you're going to handle differences among yourselves?
Well, fortunately, the Minister of Finance briefed us this morning and on how he sees the MTDP and GAIN implementation plan from now on up until February next year. So we started very early, and the departments have long been asked to submit their requirements in terms of the budget. Because the Minister of Finance must have learned one or two things, that there is a new sheriff in town, so he has to consult that sheriff.
Speaking of which, I mean, which is a related issue, was among the things you spoke about was how to take country forward, economic growth and job creation. Now, part of that conversation, especially over the past few months, has been the role of Black economic empowerment, something the Democratic Alliance in particular has made or has made a campaign point, and so to speak. Only last week, they were revealing a billboard which makes their stance clear on such issues. Hence, I was asking you how you're proposing to handle differences going forward. Did you get to those kinds of issues? In other words, the detail, of what it's going to mean and what it's going to take to grow the economy and create employment?
We endorsed the GAIN implementation plan as well as the MTDP, which were part of it when we had Lekgotla recently. So we don't have much problem. The DGs and the ministers in various departments are busy with their implementation strategy. And what I like about this is that we said if Department X is going to do A, B, C, D, E, they must come back either before December or January with a plan and timeframes. How are they going to implement? So those details are already being discussed. Insofar as the BEE concept, each political party has got its own vision and so on. So it doesn't mean that if you are saying we don't want BEE, you will have veto powers. If the majority of the parties in the GNU says the BEE is here to stay, but let us listen to those who say they don't want BEE. Which areas are they not happy with? If they say the BEE is only enjoyed by certain criteria of the population, especially the well-known people. So let's hear other parties to say, how do we cascade the BEE so that even the lowest levels can participate in the economic mainstream and economic emancipation of the South Africans. Remember, in 1948, the Afrikaners were poor like us, but the state took a decision then to intervene and empower their people. Today, they are running the economy. So for how long are we going to wait and fold our arms? So the BEE, Black Economic Empowerment, we should not be shy about that, but we must state clearly that we have the majority citizens who are not participating in the economy, and how do we open doors for them? That's the key.
There's a couple of issues I still want to canvass with you, General. If I may ask you to just bear with me. We're going to take a quick break, and after the break, so there's one or two issues that I want to canvass with you before I let you go. More of this conversation, but also some analysis after the break. Welcome back, and if you just joined us, we're in conversation with General Bantu Holomisa, the leader of the UDM, following, of course, that meeting of leaders of parties that form the government of national unity. Before I let you go, General, you make the point that there are 10 parties to the GNU. Now, previously, you had a situation where if there were problems or one of the two biggest parties had an issue with the other, President Cyril Ramaphosa and John Steenhuisen would meet and then decide on, seemingly, on behalf of the rest of you, what exactly they are going to do. Does the new clearinghouse, or do the new clearinghouse arrangements deal with that particular issue? Especially given the fact that you are now going to, problems or intractable problems will now be referred to the leaders collectively and not be something that gets discussed between President Ramaphosa and John Steenhuisen?
Even the original statement of intent has never said that the ANC and DA would determine the way forward or take decisions on our behalf. If they were doing that, they were just taking chances. The clearinghouse is composed of all parties which are serving in the GNU. So the document which we signed or agreed upon is as a result of the contribution by all parties, and in particular, this big brother mentality that it must come to an end because no one has won the election. Even if you think that you are number two, but you don't have veto powers. So I hope they have learned one or two things.
Let's end it on an issue that has been discussed over the past week, especially following the appearance before the ad hoc committee that's probing allegations of infiltration within by criminals within the justice system, and something you touched on earlier when you were talking about how often you get invited to cabinet meetings and you get to be privy to discussions going on. They're just your thoughts as a leader, but also as a deputy minister, on the role of deputy ministers who, because the noise, like people started reflecting on this after last week's appearance by Castle Matale before the ad hoc committee. Just your thoughts, whether you believe or you think that deputy ministers are as useless as some people say they are.
Well, you will be surprised that almost in all departments, the ministers would always ask the deputy ministers to work closely with the accounting officers and the sections of their department. Just to make an example, in my case, Minister Angie Motshekga, Deputy Minister Mukungo, and myself, we always meet and say, we are going to look into the whole department holistically. We deal with the military veterans problems, we deal with the Department of Defense problems, and we say, all right, these are the problems, then let us address them. You don't have to be given a particular assignment, especially sensitive departments like the police and defense and intelligence. You have to know all the departments. You must know what is taking place in the Navy, in the Air Force, in the Army, in the logistics, because you are a deputy. The president was not drunk when he appointed you as a deputy, so you must contribute. So I don't have a problem with that.
Do you think there's a way in which perhaps this should be done or managed? Because certainly on the account of Castle Matale, Senzo Mchunu, the Minister of Police, didn't do what you say NG Motshekga does.
Well, I don't know, but I think we may have to look at the constitution, the powers of the president, and the powers when he appoints or when he or she appoints a cabinet minister, at least he or she should also say, I want a deputy minister in that department to focus on this. But if you allow it to the ministers to give work to their deputies, we have a history in this country where some deputy ministers have not been utilized effectively. So I'm fortunate that I'm working in my career type of a department, military, which is my career. I don't have a complex on that. You can wake me any time of the day.
General Bantu Holomisa, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.